Iron Man's complete arsenal across the MCU is genuinely staggering. Over 80 distinct suits, each one quietly more dangerous than the last. Most fans can name maybe 10. Today we're walking through every era of Tony Stark's armory, from the rusted scrap he welded together in a cave nearly 2 decades ago to the nanotech masterpiece that ended Thanos. Some of these suits you've probably forgotten, a few you've never properly understood, and one of them killed him. Let's start where every Iron Man story has to start. Mark I Origins. A cave in Afghanistan, a car battery wired to a dying man's chest, and an absurd amount of duct tape engineering. The Mark I is the suit Tony cobbled together with Ho Yinsen using scavenged Stark Industries weapons parts and the kind of grief that turns men into legends. It's clunky, gray, weighs a ton, and somehow it flies. Sort of. Mostly it lurches. Here's the bit fans love but rarely talk about. The Mark I is powered by the very first arc reactor Tony ever built outside a lab, designed under real duress while shrapnel crept toward his heart. The suit runs primitive flamethrowers along the forearms and a one-shot boot rocket that's basically a one-way ticket out of the desert. There's no targeting, no AI, no comms. It's a coffin with attitude. What's wildly underrated is what the Mark I represents. Tony kept the chest plate, the one Pepper later engraved with proof that Tony Stark has a heart. Every later suit is, in some way, a love letter and an apology back to that cave. Jokes aside, without the Mark I, there's no Avengers, no Stark Tower, no snap heard across half a galaxy. Comic readers will also spot how heavily this MCU design echoes the very first Iron Man suit from over 60 years of comic history. Same blocky silhouette, same desperate engineer energy. Stick around, because Tony's next suits dropped the cave aesthetic entirely and went full rich genius with too much spare time, complete with a hot rod paint job. Iconic red and gold. After the cave, Tony went home, locked himself in his Malibu workshop, and basically reinvented personal aviation in a long weekend. The Mark II is the silver suit you see him test flying around the lab. The one that gives us, sometimes you gotta run before you can walk. It can fly, it has a working HUD, and the catch is brutal. It freezes solid at altitude. Most billionaires would call that a deal breaker. The Mark III fixes it with a gold titanium alloy and that hot rod red paint job, supposedly inspired by an old hot rod sitting in Tony's garage. This is the suit that fights Ironmonger above the Stark Industries arc reactor, and the one that introduces the world to "I am Iron Man." It's also where the repulsors get properly weaponized. Earlier, they were stabilizers. Tony just realized mid-flight he could shoot people with his palms. Classic Stark workflow. The Mark IV is the one Tony parties in, the suit Rhodey kicks the hardware out of at his birthday bash. Its real legacy isn't the upgrades, it's the brawl that makes Rhodey grab the Mark II off the rack and walk out wearing it. Without that drunken fight, Hammer never weaponizes Rhodey's heavier loadout. The MCU's entire War Machine timeline pivots on a glass of champagne and bad parenting. What follows is the MCU's strangest design choice, a working Iron Man suit that folds neatly into hand luggage. Suitcase and core. The Mark V is one of the silliest, most beloved suits in the whole MCU. It folds itself into a briefcase, an actual briefcase. Tony deploys it on the Monaco racetrack when Ivan Vanko shows up swinging electrified whips, and the suit unfolds onto Tony like the world's most dangerous origami. It's lightweight, less armored, and runs on a smaller portable battery. Tony designed it as an emergency backup, not a heavy hitter. And it shows. Tony gets the tar beaten out of him in that fight because the Mark V was never built for a Whiplash-class brawler. Then comes the Mark VI, and this one is huge. Why? Because it's powered by a brand new element. The palladium core in Tony's old reactors was actively poisoning him. Black veins, vomiting, the whole gothic horror routine. So Tony, using his late father's notes and a home-built particle accelerator, synthesizes a completely new element. The MCU never names it, which still drives comic fans wild, because they want it to be vibranium. It's not. It's its own thing entirely. The new core delivers a triangular reactor, more power, far more efficient repulsors, and no more slow-motion suicide. The Mark VI even has shoulder-mounted lasers Tony uses exactly once at the Stark Expo, then quietly retires. Just ahead, the suit that turned a pair of wristbands into Earth's mightiest deployment system, just in time for an alien invasion. Battle of New York. By the time Tony lined up against Loki in the Battle of New York, his armor had a problem. He kept getting caught off guard. The Mark VI was great, but it lived on a launch pad, so Tony built the Mark VII, the suit that introduced the world to deployable summoning. It's the one with the wrist-mounted homing bracelets. Tony jumps off Stark Tower with no suit on. The bracelets ping the launchers below, and the armor assembles around him in midair. It's flashy, reckless, pure showboat. And it's also the first suit that doesn't need Tony anywhere near a lab to put it on. Tactically, the Mark VII is a beast. It's the first suit with on-the-fly weapon deployment. Shoulder mortars, mini-missiles tucked into the gauntlets, and significantly upgraded repulsor output. It's also tough as nails. Tony took a direct lightning bolt from Thor in this thing, and instead of frying him, the suit absorbed the energy and pushed Jarvis's readout to a clean 400% power. The Mark VII can run on Norse god voltage, not the kind of thing you'd ever put in a Stark Industries spec sheet, and easily the closest the MCU has come to admitting Tony's tech genuinely competes with Asgardian mysticism. Here's the controversial corner. The Mark VII isn't actually that durable in canon. It takes serious damage during the Battle of New York, especially when Tony pilots a nuclear missile through the Chitauri portal. The suit dies on him on the way back. Fans often forget Tony is essentially flying an unpowered metal coffin during that free fall, only saved by Hulk's catch. The Mark VII didn't have anything like a survival ejector or emergency parachute. Tony just trusted luck and a friend with green-skinned reflexes. Quick aside on the AI. Jarvis is Tony's original system, sacrificed during Age of Ultron to help create Vision's consciousness. After that, Friday takes over. Her name doesn't come from the day of the week. It's a nod to the old Girl Friday concept of a trusted personal assistant. Tony's a film nerd, basically. Hold tight, because Tony lost his mind, built 35 suits in his basement, and unleashed all of them at once on Christmas Eve. House Party Protocol. Iron Man 3 is when Tony Stark started building suits the way most of us doom scroll at 3 a.m. Compulsively, in volume, and with no impulse control. After New York, Tony develops PTSD, can't sleep, and ends up assembling 35 Iron Man variants in his Malibu workshop, the Marks 8 through 42. This is the Iron Legion in its first form. Each suit has a specialized role: deep sea, sub-zero, heavy artillery, stealth, even one designed for upper atmosphere reconnaissance. There's a suit purpose-built for high-temperature environments, one with stealth coating, another for heavy demolition, and one for deep-water salvage. Tony was throwing physics at his anxiety, and the result is the most absurdly diverse personal armory anyone's ever owned. The flagship of the bunch is the Mark 42, nicknamed the Prodigal Son. It's the first prehensile suit, meaning every individual piece flies independently. Summoned by chips Tony has surgically implanted into his arms. He can call a single gauntlet to his hand from across the country if he wants to. The catch? It's also the buggiest, most temperamental suit Tony ever built. The 42 glitches throughout the entire film. It misfires, falls off mid-air, freezes up. Tony's openly frustrated with it for the whole runtime. Brilliant and a lemon simultaneously. The most famous moment in the Iron Man 3 arsenal is the House Party Protocol, the bit at the end where Tony commands Jarvis to deploy every single suit in the Hall of Armor to fight the extremist soldiers at the docks. It's a glorious, ridiculous set piece, and many fans miss the fact that the suits are all flying autonomously, without Tony or Rhodey inside them. They're drones. The XL High is the only one piloted intermittently, and even Tony jumps in and out of it constantly during that final fight. The kicker is the clean slate protocol that immediately follows. Tony tells Jarvis to detonate every suit in the sky as a romantic gesture for Pepper. He literally fireworks his entire workshop. Did he actually destroy all his armor forever? Of course not. Age of Ultron proves otherwise, but the symbolism is huge. Tony momentarily lets go of the obsession that had been quietly drowning him. The Hulkbuster, officially the Mark 44, is one of the most jaw-dropping suits in the entire MCU, and a great window into how genuinely paranoid Tony was after New York. He built it in collaboration with Bruce Banner himself, codenamed Veronica, as a contingency plan in case Hulk ever lost control around civilians. The whole thing is a satellite-based deployment system. When Tony triggers it, an orbital module drops a containment cage and the Hulkbuster armor, which then bonds onto Tony's standard Mark 43 like a giant exoskeleton over his existing suit. That's the part most casual fans miss. The Hulkbuster isn't a standalone suit. It's a heavy armor overlay. Tony's smaller XT-30 is essentially the cockpit of a much, much bigger machine. That layered design lets him still fly the inner suit independently if the Hulkbuster gets shredded, which it absolutely does in Johannesburg. The Johannesburg fight in Age of Ultron is the suit's only proper combat appearance, and it's brutal. Tony repeatedly takes Hulk's head off, figuratively, by punching him through buildings, deploying detachable repulsor fists, and crashing both of them through several skyscrapers in a row. By the end of the brawl, most of the suit is held together by sheer Stark engineering and pure spite. Here's the controversial part, and a lot of MCU fans get heated about this. The Hulkbuster doesn't actually beat Hulk. They're not wrong. The fight ends with Hulk leaping away, not unconscious. Tony's just trying to contain him until he tires. The suit's job isn't to win, it's to delay long enough for civilians to evacuate and for Banner to come back. Once you reframe it that way, the Hulkbuster is a defensive system, not an offensive one. There's also a Hulkbuster Mark II later in Infinity War, briefly worn by Bruce Banner himself in Wakanda. Same lineage, but Banner's piloting it because Hulk has gone shy. Worth noting on Veronica, by the way, the codename is widely understood to reference Archie Comics' Betty and Veronica, Betty Ross being Banner's calmer love interest in the wider canon, and Veronica being the deliberately combative cousin. Tony picked it because nobody near a chemistry lab survives without dark humor. Civil War loadout. Once the Sokovia Accords reshaped the Avengers, Tony genuinely was a different man. And he needed a different suit. Enter the Mark 46 in Captain America. Civil War. It's a deliberate aesthetic step away from the bulkier, earlier models. Lighter, slimmer, with redesigned repulsor housings and improved maneuverability. Tony built it knowing he might have to fight other enhanced humans on uneven terrain, airports, urban centers, instead of open battlefields. The 46th is also the suit that takes the most physical beating Tony's ever endured on screen. By the time Captain America's shield buries itself in the chest reactor in Siberia, the 46th is essentially a smoking ruin. Then there's the Mark 47, the suit briefly visible in Spider-Man: Homecoming. It's a refinement of the 46 with cleaner lines and improved comms, and there's a long-running fan debate about whether Tony was actually inside it during the lecture scene with Peter, or whether Happy Hogan was piloting it remotely. The film stays maddeningly ambiguous. Most fans now lean toward Tony was inside it, but the way the suit moves in that scene is suspiciously stiff. Make of that what you will. Either way, the 47th is essentially the last conventional suit Tony ever built before nanotech rewrote everything. Pepper's rescue armor also belongs to this tail-end era, though it stays mothballed until Endgame's final battle. Brace yourself, because Tony invented an entirely new kind of armor next, and it changed the Iron Man playbook forever. Nanotech and beyond. The Mark L, or Mark 50, is the moment the Iron Man arsenal stops being armor and starts feeling closer to magic. It's the first nanotech suit. The whole thing lives in the housing on Tony's chest reactor, and when he activates it, microscopic nanoparticles assemble around his body in real time. He can grow new weapons mid-fight just by thinking about them. Battering rams, shields, blade arms, even an emergency capsule for passengers. The Mark 50's debut against Thanos on Titan is the strongest the suit ever looks. Tony fights an Infinity Stone-empowered cosmic warlord, almost to a draw, using nothing but a chest plate's worth of nanites. Then comes the Mark 85. Mark 85, the final suit. Built during Endgame's time heist, it integrates with Tony's homemade Stark Gauntlet and lets him absorb all 6 Infinity Stones, long enough to snap Thanos' army out of existence. The energy backlash kills him. The suit doesn't fail. Tony's body does. Jokes aside, the Mark 85 is the most powerful piece of equipment a human being has ever worn. It killed Thanos. It also killed Tony. The arsenal that started in a cave ended saving half the universe. From a chest plate carved with proof that Tony Stark has a heart to a gauntlet that snapped Thanos out of existence. That's the whole arc. And that's Iron Man's complete arsenal across the MCU. Every cave-built bolt, every nanotech masterpiece, every wildly underrated chapter in between. If this scratched the itch, you'll want to subscribe for more. Hope you found this video helpful, and I'll see you in the next one.